when it comes to love, is age really just a number? Well, clinical psychotherapist Stephanie Regan joins us now to discuss this. Good morning to you.
Morning, guys. How are
Now,
you?
this has been going many, many years. I mean, if we look back at old Hollywood, there was always significant age gaps, but I think it was a bit more accepted with a man and a woman. But the controversy surrounding Billie Eilish, people are quite exercised over this. Does that surprise you?
Yeah, I don't really understand it in some respects, because I think it's true. It's what people are used to, that the man is always older. That's kind of, I suppose that's sort of come down the line. You know, it's sort of, in evolutionary terms, that's the way things have gone. You know, women look for security. They look for people, you know, they look for steadiness for those childbearing times and childbearing years. But that is all changing, because women are becoming much more financially independent. They don't need a partner for that. We're looking for partners, and what we want out of relationships is quite different. So, you know, in that sense, things are changing. Billie Eilish, she's 20. She's just exploring, you know. She's not saying she's marrying and going to have children with this man, and maybe she will.
Yeah.
But she's not saying that. She's 20, she's exploring. I would say there are very few 20-year-olds who haven't gone out with somebody with an age gap, you know, with somebody who's 5 years older than them, 2 years younger than them. I think it's part of exploring, quite frankly. And quite okay.
Is it, I know, generally speaking, it is usually men that would take a younger partner.
Yes.
But you're saying we're seeing a shift now.
Yes.
This kind of, is the gender bias levelling out?
I think it's about financial sort of careers, and that women are really becoming much more independent, and so they're looking for different things. You know, they're not looking just for security, because, you know, it's not that women were consciously doing that, but unconsciously they were doing that, seeking out steadiness, security, and a kind of, I suppose, a lifelong trajectory where they could see how things were going to be for them in security terms. That's kind of gone. And so the 2 year, I wouldn't call 2 years an age gap, to be honest with you, because 2 years is the normal, you know, 2 above, 2 below, fairly normal. And you're right, it's usually the man who is older. But I was looking at the figures, actually, and it's only about 1% of all marriages have a big age gap of any significance. But there's a lot of that sort of shifting now. I saw it on a dating site, how when people are dating now, they're prepared to actually date 10 years above and below in terms of age group. You know, men are prepared to date women who are 10 years younger, and women are prepared to date men who are 10 years older. That's a big gap. Now, that's a shift, and I have to tell you, I have seen that. I can see that in what I deal with myself, you know, in the love and relationship spectrum. Women are... Why would they make their pool of selection smaller, if you think about it?
Yeah.
When, as you get older, the pool from which you're picking is smaller anyway. So if you've got your house, your money, your career, and you're set, what are you looking for in a relationship? You're looking for someone who, you know, who will just partner up, who'll be fun, who'll be good socially, who'll look after you, who'll be involved, you know, emotionally, sexually with you. Fine. They're not looking for anything else. Yeah. So there's a lot of that shift.
Yeah, and I suppose for women as well, they reach their sexual prime a lot older than men would, so there is that imperative there as well.
That's another point, exactly. Now, it doesn't mean it's without problems. There can be problems, as you mentioned there, the sexual shift. Clearly, there can be a shift as, you know, if they move through the relationship, you know, as those decades click in, well, then they can be at different stages of life and different stages of energy. You can look at it that way too. You know, there's menopausal issues, all of those. But it doesn't mean that it's insurmountable. And there are also advantages. I think people look at all the bad things, do you know? Yeah. But there's lots of good things.
But there is a bit of a stigma still surrounding women, because cougar, I'm terrified of dating anyone younger, significantly younger than me, because you get the cougar thing bandied around all the time, probably from all the slagging on the last show I did, because we used to have a Man Friday panel, and we used to mock about that all the time. But it is true. I mean, there was a joke, half your age plus 7, anything younger than that, and you're a cougar town. You got into cougar town, and there's no coming back. And you don't get the reverse.
No, that's right. And actually, women are more inclined to be judgmental of it than men are.
Really?
Yes.
Interesting.
Of women for dating down.
Yeah.
You know, dating down in years. Yeah. Whereas, you know, there's a lot of sense to it. If we want to look at it the other way, you know, often men die younger than women.
That is true.
Sorry about that.
You said that almost a bit like you were happy about that fact.
I'm not happy about it, but it's just, I'm just calling it as it is.
Yeah, and if you wanted to look at it that way, there's a lot of logic for women to have a younger man.
Yeah.
And we would even things out, you know, in that kind of way.
Generally speaking, they're more lively as well.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But there are lots of good things, because I always think in relationships, somebody leads, somebody knows something more, about, the way we have different strengths and all of that. And, if somebody is older, well, they might be more established, they might have a broader life, and people, the younger person gets into that. So there are
Can I ask you about maturity levels, though? Because all jokes aside, it can, when you reach, when do people reach adulthood? And I think at that stage, it doesn't really matter the age gap. It's different if you're like a 17-year-old going out with a 25, 26-year-old, or even a 20-year-old going out with a 35-year-old. That is significant. But if you're a 30-year-old going out with a 45-year-old or something like that, even though it's 15 years, because maturity levels kind of even out at that point, it's not as significant, maybe.
Of course. I mean, when we reach full maturity, which is what you're saying, you don't mature much more after 30. Your life might change.
Some would say some men don't even get to that point.
Yes.
They don't even mature at 30.
I mean, look, you can meet people at 45 and they're not mature. But the truth is brain development and all of that sort of, the sort of normal markers we would expect people to have met at 30. Men. Women meet them much earlier. Sorry, and that's the truth of it.
I was in London a couple of years ago and we were in a very fancy bar and there was a man who was well into his 60s and there was a girl who was barely 20. And she just spent the time on her phone and he kind of spent the time looking off into the distance. He'd wonder, we were sitting there and go, what do they have in common? What are they talking about? And
that's a different type of relationship now, I think.
There's a huge generation gap. But it's interesting that once you kind of get to that point of 30-ish, then age is just a number, unless you want to start talking about families and children. I suppose that's when it comes back into play, is it?
That's right. I think so. And of course, you're bringing up the wanting to have children factor. I mean, of course, it matters hugely in the who wants to have children, but the maturity factor definitely evens out. So we would find that people in general are happy, with the age gap, but it's limited by who wants to have children. That's a real point to put in there.
Wow, fascinating. Thank you so much for joining us today with your interesting insights.
Absolutely welcome.